grow up. They soon know that they will grow up, and the way that Wendy knew was this. One day, when she was 2 years old, she was playing in a garden when she picked another flower and ran with it to her mother. How delightful she must have looked, for Mrs. Darling cried, "Oh, why can't you remain like this forever?" Henceforth, Wendy always knew that she must grow up. You always know when you are 2. 2 is the beginning of the end. Mrs. Darling was a lovely lady with a romantic mind. She had a sweet, wonderful way about her, and Wendy loved her so. Mr. Darling was one of those deep men who know all about stocks and shares and banks and such. In fact, he seemed to know everything there is to know. He often said stocks were up and shares were down in such a way that would make anyone respect him. The 3 Darling children were such. Wendy first, then John, then little Michael. Mrs. Darling loved to have everything just so, and Mr. Darling had a passion for being exactly like his neighbors, so of course they had a nurse for their children, a prim, silk-eared Newfoundland dog called Nana. Mr. Darling had an uneasy feeling at times that Nana did not quite admire him. But Mrs. Darling said Nana was a treasure of a nurse, and indeed, no nurse could have tended, protected, and loved any young children more perfectly than did Nana. There never was a simpler, happier family until the coming of Peter Pan. Mrs. Darling first met Peter Pan when she was tidying up her children's minds, a nightly custom all good mothers perform after their children have gone to sleep. If you were to see your own mother doing this, which you can't because you're asleep, you would find it most interesting. It looks like she's tidying up your messy drawers. She gets down on her knees and rummages through all the contents of your mind, ordering it all as she goes along. When you wake in the morning, all the naughty things and mean thoughts you went to bed with are folded up small and placed at the bottom of your mind. And on the top, beautifully aired, are all your prettier thoughts all ready for you to put on. Have you ever seen a map of a child's mind? All are confusing. A sort of Neverland where skipping stones and chocolate pudding are, and first days of school live side by side. Neverland is always an island. It has caves and pirates and children forever playing on its wondrous shores. In John's mind was a lagoon with flamingos flying overhead, while Michael, who was still very small, had a lagoon with flamingos flying over it. Wendy had a pet wolf, forsaken by its parents, living in her mind. It was here inside her children's minds that Mrs. Darling first met Peter Pan. Wendy told her mother in a matter-of-fact way that Peter often came to the nursery in the night. Sometimes he sat on the foot of her bed and played his pipes. One night, she told her mother, laughing a little, he came to listen to the adventure stories I tell John and Michael, but Nana saw him and barked so loudly that Peter leapt out of the window just before Nana slammed it shut. He got away, but Nana caught his shadow in her mouth. She put it in a drawer. "But how could he get in the house?" asked Mrs. Darling. "The nursery is 30 feet off the ground." "Through the window," replied Wendy. "That's why there are those strange leaves on our floor in the morning when you come to wake us, Mother." "Wendy," said Mrs. Darling nervously, I do believe you have been dreaming." But Wendy had not been dreaming, for it was the very next night on which the extraordinary adventures of these children may be said to have begun, on a never-to-be-forgotten Friday. All the little stars were watching that night, and when Mother and Father left their home for dinner and walked away down the snowy street from their children, the children's nightlights went black. And the smallest star in the sky screamed out, "Now, Peter!" A twinkling, dazzling light darted into the nursery. It was a tiny fury of a fairy no bigger than your fist, named Tinkerbell. And in the time it has taken me to say her name, Tinkerbell rummaged through the wardrobe, knocked all of the books from their shelves, toppled all the toys, all in her determined effort to find Peter's lost shadow. Then the window blew open, and Peter Pan dropped to the floor. "Where have they put my shadow, Tink?" She started flitting about. "In the chest of drawers," she said in her fairy voice, which sounds like the tinkling of teeny golden bells. Peter jumped to the drawer, pulled out his shadow, and slammed the drawer. Alas, he had shut tiny Tinkerbell inside. Peter and his shadow, when brought near each other, did not join like drops of water, and he was appalled. He sat right down on the floor and cried. His sobs woke Wendy, who was pleasantly interested in the sight. "Boy, what's your name?" "Peter Pan. What's yours?" "Wendy Moira Angela Darling," she replied. "Where do you live, Peter?" "Second star to the right and straight on till morning, in the Neverland." "Is that what they put on your mother's address?" "Don't have a mother?" "Oh, Peter, no wonder you were crying." "I wasn't crying about mothers," Peter said indignantly. "I was crying because I can't get my shadow to stick on. Besides, I wasn't crying." Wendy immediately took out her needle and thread and sewed his shadow back on for him. "How old are you, Peter?" Peter frowned. "I don't know. I ran away the day I was born because I heard my father and mother talking about what I would be when I became a man. I don't want to grow up. I want to be a boy and have fun forever. So I ran away to live with the fairies." "Peter," asked Wendy, "if you don't have a mother, with whom do you live?" "With the lost boys, the children who fall out of their carriages when the grown-ups are looking the other way. And I'm their captain. But we are lonely sometimes. None of us knows any stories." "Oh, Peter," said Wendy, "I know lots of stories." "Wendy, do come away with me and tell the other boys." Oh dear, I can't fly." "I'll teach you. I'll teach you to jump on the wind's back, and then away we go. Come, Wendy." "But what of Mother? I really can't." "There are mermaids," Peter said slyly. "Ooh, really?" said Wendy. Peter knew he almost had it now. "You could tuck us in at night and mend our clothes. You could be our mother." Wow, that did it. "Michael, John, wake up!" cried Wendy. "Peter Pan has come, and he's going to teach us to fly." John and Michael were up in a second, and Peter blew fairy dust on all three of them. "No one can fly without fairy dust. Now," said Peter, "just wiggle your shoulders, let go, think lovely, wonderful thoughts, and you will be lifted into the air." And so the children learned to fly. night, soaring high and swooping low. They flew far out over the seas, and for how long they could not tell, when they came upon a million glittering golden arrows, all pointing toward an island. Down on the island, feeling that Peter was on his way back, the Neverland awoke to full life. So you can get an idea of how busy everything on the island was. Picture all the lost boys out looking for Peter, and right behind them, all the pirates out looking for the lost boys. And there was the pirate ship, dark and foreboding, called the Jolly Roger. The pirates were led by the dark, ringlet-haired, villainous, dangerous, evil Captain James Hook. He cried out to his men, "It is Peter Pan, the lost boy's captain that I want. 'Twas he who cut off my arm and flung it to the crocodile who was swimming by. She has followed me ever since she has, licking her lips for the rest of me. But I always know when she's near, for the tick, tick, ticking of the clock in her belly, the one she swallowed a long time ago. I will rest until I see Peter Pan dead." Deep in the forest in Neverland, Peter took Wendy and Michael and John to the secret home that he shared with the lost boys. All the boys lived in the underground, each with his own secret entrance of a hollow tree. That is how they hide from the pirates. Brave Peter kept watch outside, for the pirates could be heard carousing far away, and wolves howled and prowled on the edge of the forest. "Wendy," whispered Peter, so as to not wake the boys. "Follow me. I have something to show you." Together, hand in hand, Peter and Wendy flew up through the hollow tree out into the moonlit forest. The dell was aglow with dazzling fairy light. Wendy could scarce believe her eyes as she watched hundreds of fairies, all dressed in sparkles and twinkling lights as they danced the night away to the most enchanting, beautiful music. Peter smiled. Fairies began a long time ago, when the first baby laughed for the first time. Its laugh broke into 1,000 pieces, and all the pieces went skipping about, and each piece became a fairy. And that's how fairies began. Peter swept Wendy up into his arms and twirled and leapt far into the sky, up through the silvery branches, spinning at times, almost to the very stars. At the first light of dawn, the music and the magic began to fade, and Wendy and Peter returned. But someone was spying on them, his silver hook glistening in the moonlight. More time passed, wonderful day in, and Magical day out, adventures filled each and every day. The children often spent time at the Mermaid Lagoon, picnicking and swimming and calling to the mermaids. Wendy continued to tell her wondrous stories to Peter and the Lost Boys each and every night. One evening, Wendy remembered her dear mother and father and Nana, and she told the boys all about them, how her mother would be missing her children so, and how the nursery window would still be open, awaiting their return. At the close of the story, all were still. And John said sadly, "Let's go home." "Of course," said Wendy, "at once." All of the boys looked sad, though no one as much so as Peter. "Why not come with us?" said Wendy. "My parents can adopt you." They all looked at Peter, and he said, "Go then, but I'm not going with you. I just want to be a little boy and have fun forever." Each child emerged from the home underground, only to be quickly snatched by the pirates who had discovered their hidden home. Hook himself, in true gentleman fashion, offered his arm to Wendy to escort her personally to her captivity on board the Jolly Roger pirate ship. Tinkerbell had seen everything. She raced to tell Peter of Wendy and the boys. The moon was riding high in a cloudy heaven when Peter emerged to set upon his perilous quest. On his way toward the ship, he spotted the crocodile, but the clock in the creature's belly must have stopped, for there was no ticking, no sound at all. He swore to himself, "Hook or me this time." Aboard the foul ship Jolly Roger, the pirates were gloating over their victory. Hook had all the children chained to the mast so they would not fly away. Wendy was tied to the mast, and Hook took a swaggering step toward her. "So, my beauty, are you ready to see your boys walk the plank?" Suddenly, Hook froze. Tick, 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 tick. Hook fell in a heap. "Hide me," he gasped to his men. Children rushed to the ship's side to see the crocodile, only to see Peter Pan. Peter slipped slyly on board and stopped his ticking because it was really Peter making the sound. He quickly handed the pirates' weapons to his boys and then untied Wendy and wrapped himself in Wendy's cloak. "Captain," said the first mate Smee to Hook, "the ticking is stopped, so the crocodile is gone, but that girl has brought nothing but trouble." "Aye, so she has. So let's throw that girl overboard." Hook approached the mast. Peter hid his face in the cloak. The pirate crowded in, saying, "No one can save you now. There is one who can," cried Wendy, cried Peter in Wendy's voice. "Who?" said Hook. "Peter Pan the Avenger," said Peter, flinging off the cloak. Peter and Hook fought each other with skill and passion. Their swords clinked in furious battle. Hook was at long last backed against the side of the ship. Seeing Peter advancing steadily toward him with his sword ready and poised, Hook leapt up to the side of the ship to cast himself into the sea to safety. Little did he know that the crocodile was waiting for him, its jaws wide Open! Peter gave one kick, and overboard Hook fell. And that was the end of Captain Hook. The following evening, hundreds of shimmering lights readied the ship for the return voyage, magically mending sails and sprinkling fairy dust everywhere they went. The boys put on pirate clothes, and Captain Peter took the wheel and turned the ship around as it rose to the clouds. He was taking Wendy home. Ship sailed through the night over the still streets of London and came to rest near the children's bedroom window. And now we must return to the sad home of the Darlings and Nana. Observe, my friends, that the nursery window, after so long a time since the children flew away, is still wide open. When Wendy and John and Michael flew into the room, there could not have been a lovelier sight. But there was no one there to see it except the strange boy staring at the window. His life was filled with joys that other children could never know. But Peter was looking at the one joy from which he must be barred forever. Wendy's parents did adopt all the lost boys. Peter, said Mrs. Darling, I would like to adopt you too. Would you send me to school? Yes. Then to an office? Yes, said Mrs. Darling. Then my answer is no, he said. No one's going to catch me and make me a man. Peter watched as the boys, who were his companions for so long, huddled around their new parents. As he readied to leave, Wendy walked to the window to say goodbye to Peter, her eyes filled with tears. You won't forget me, will you, Peter? Asked Wendy. Me? Forget? Never? Will you come again? To listen to my stories? Asked Wendy. If they're about me, said Peter. And he flew away. And so, Wendy did grow up, of her own free will, and she told wonderful stories of Peter Pan to her children, who, in turn, grew up and told Peter Pan to their children, and so on. And that is how it will always be. Children who believe in Neverland.